Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This is Seti Lamort again with another issue of History and Principles of Thelema. Last time we were talking about Rabelais and his work with all the Gargantua and Pantagruel books and how that relates to Thelema. Today we are going to talk about Sir Francis Dashwood and the Hellfire Club. Let's see, who was this Dashwood? He was born in London in 1708. He was the son of a baronet. He lost his father at the age of 15 and he inherited the baronetcy of West Wickham. Now, the hills around West Wickham had certain caves, and he had those caves built in and extended a little bit. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. When he was young, he went on grand tours. Now, the grand tours of that time was a way for young noble kids to experience firsthand the art and culture of Europe, both classic and modern. It usually started from England, and they went to France or Belgium. Then they moved to Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Germany, and the Netherlands, and then they went home to England again. Now, Dashwood did the Grand Tour several times, especially he was very much fond of Italy. From January to September 1726, he went on his first Grand Tour. Then he returned to Italy in 1729 and didn't even come home until 1732. Now, after all that time, he had a really good idea of Italian masters, Italian painting, Italian classical culture. And in the same year, he founded, with several other people, the Dilettanti Society for gentlemen who did the Grand Tour and returned with a greater appreciation for fine arts. At this lunch club, if we can call it that, they talked about all sorts of things. They dabbled in the arts themselves, and this is where the word dilettante comes from. Someone who is not really an artist, who doesn't really know what they're doing, but they're still doing it. Now, at this club, several members were painted, and one of the members got Dashwood painted as a Franciscan monk. And this painting is called Dashwood at His Devotions. In 1733, Dashwood's friend, Lord Forbes, is appointed envoy extraordinaire to the court of Anna, the Tsarina of Russia of the time, and Dashwood tags along for the ride. He was a very funny man and quite brave, definitely, because he impersonated Charles XII, who was the Swedish king of the time, in the hopes of getting the then 40-year-old empress to bed. Dashwood was 25 at the time, so this was quite extraordinary. By 1736, he becomes a leading member of the Dilettanti, and he is well known amongst the noble people of England. Between 1739 and 41, Dashwood goes to Italy again, where he is expelled from the Papal States for unruly behavior. In 1743, Horace Walpole, a nobleman, describes the club of dilettanti as a club for which the nominal qualification is having been to Italy, and the real one being drunk. The two chiefs are Lord Middlesex and Sir Francis Dashwood, who were seldom sober the whole time they were in Italy. Of course, this description had nothing to do with Dashwood being one of the people responsible for Walpole's father resigning from his post as Premier and Prime Minister. In 1744, Dashwood founds the Divan Club with a fellow dilettante, the Earl of Sandwich. This notorious gambler was the inventor of the sandwich. He never stood up from the card table just to have something to eat. He'd always order a chunk of meat between 2 slices of bread. And every friend of his would go, "Yeah, I'll have the same as the sandwich has." And this is how the sandwich was born. Now, the Divan Club was for those who have visited the Ottoman Empire. The members gathered, shared their stories of the Orient, wore Oriental dresses, and drank like fish. Of course, they were wearing all these Ottoman dresses completely wrong, and this was pretty much, once again, about having a good time and drinking. The ladies, actually, this club took ladies as members, and the ladies wore harem pants and harem lady dressing, and everyone displayed ungentlemanly and unladylike behavior, which was not extraordinary for that kind of group. Dashwood becomes the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who was the head of Treasury, in 1762, but he had to resign in 1763 when his introduction of a small tax on ciders incited riots in London. He wasn't a very popular person at the time. During the Grand Tour, Dashwood was said to have frequented religious seminaries on religious orders. On Walpurgisnacht, April 30th of 1752, he founded the Brotherhood of St. Francis of Wickham, Order of Knights of West Wickham. This was a dinner club that was the first version of the later Hellfire Club. In 1755, Dashwood founds the Monks of Medmenham Abbey. The actual Medmenham Abbey was originally of the Cistercian order, abandoned and fell into disrepair. Dashwood and the other 11 who rented the place got the building rebuilt Gothic Revival style. Stained glass windows, murals, and the Rebellious inscription "Fais ce que voudras," do what thou wilt, over the grand entrance. The inhabitants amused themselves with obscene and very funny parodies of Franciscan rites. Actually, this is where Thelema comes into play when Dashwood is concerned. Dashwood also excavated and built the Hellfire Caves in West Wickham, which is a maze with secret passages and has a main chamber with symbolic furnishing, another place where they met and debauched in a blasphemous way. Now, this is where we can see that the philosophy of the Hellfire Club became the antithesis of Rabelais' humanist ideals. While Rabelais believed that well-educated and well-bred people would become noble when freed from constraints, Dashwood's club proved that it leads to hedonism and debauchery. Because we can't really find people who were more well-bred and well-educated than the group who became the Hellfire Club. Now, looking into the actual philosophy of the Hellfire Club, we are not really talking about just a group of people who got together and got drunk as hell. They did. They definitely did. They had strippers, they had orgies, they had everything that was against the basic rules of society of the time. But then again, they had symbols, they had ideas, they had philosophy, they had mysteries. Looking into the symbology of the Hellfire Club, we see symbols of light, of truth, noble ideas, and very sacred ideas, which were nevertheless pursued in a less noble way. However, it does not really matter how does one seek the truth, if they find it. There is an old Latin saying, "In vino veritas," in wine there is truth. Two things spring to mind when we are talking about wine and truth. One is the decante, the decanting bottle. In the wine made in the old way, you would have floating bits of yeast which would float to the bottom of the barrel, but still some would come out, and when you fill a bottle with it, and you have a decanting part of that, that would be trapped, and only the pure wine would come out. And that's very important. When you have reached a certain level of drunkenness, you leave the gross material part of you behind, and your philosophy starts to soar. This is one of the mysteries of the Dionysian cult. Another important thing that springs to mind is Rabelais' Oracle of the Bottle, which happened in the 5th book of Gargantua and Pantagruel. And in chapter 5, part 44, which is entitled How Bacbuk, the high priestess, brought Panurge before the holy bottle, we see an actual oracle which is made with a bottle, and Bacbuk, the high priestess, says the following poem. Bottle, whose mysterious deep dost 10,000 secrets keep, with attentive ear I wait. Ease my mind and speak my fate, soul of joy, like Bacchus, we more than India gain by thee. Truth unborn thy justice reveals, which futurity conceals, antidotes to frauds and lies, wine that mounts us to the skies. May thy father Noah's brood, like him drown, but in thy flood speak, so may the liquid mine of rubies and of diamonds shine. Bottle, whose mysterious deep dost 10,000 secrets keep, with attentive ear I wait. Ease my mind and speak my fate. Thank you kindly for listening, and see you next time. Love is the law, love under will.